thing, and we're in election season, so we're kind of in a quandary, and we just need to bring it before the council, so I'll turn it over to you, Eric.
Yeah, so the reason this is coming, and Catherine, I do apologize for not calling you. I didn't call anybody on this, so it wasn't just you. It wasn't anybody. So because as it's a discussion item and because how it came up, that's all I thought it would be, as a discussion item. So, and the reason this is coming up is because there's been some citizen complaints. This isn't coming from the council, it's coming from the citizens, that if the radio is not allowing candidates to speak on the radio or campaign on the radio or anything like that because it's a city property, then should any candidate be able to be on city property campaigning if they're doing it on their own? Now, if it's like the candidate forum at the library is promoted by a third party, so it's not any one candidate just going to the library. So that's just what we wanted to bring up as a discussion. You know, do we want to be consistent with city property and candidates actually being on those properties, doing campaign and meetings and stuff? And again, this comes from complaint from citizens saying, you know, we're not being consistent.
Eric, do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So you're talking about city-owned property, not leased city-owned property?
Yes, city-owned property.
Right, but not if it's leased, then that doesn't
Such as?
apply.
Such as?
Golf Lions Club, at one time it was a golf course.
Yeah, Lions Club.
And Dille had already made a judgment on that, so. So if it's owned by, if somebody's leasing something from the city, then the person that's leasing it puts it in a different realm, and they can have advertisement like the golf course did here 2 years ago. That's a city-owned golf course, but it was leased to Xander, and he was allowed to put political things out there. So same with the Lions Club, that's leased also.
Well, again, it came up because we had a complaint that we weren't having standards. Went back to when Brent had a discussion with Crystal about the Lions Club before, and the determination, and Brent can speak to it, but the determination was you couldn't have an individual person, but you could have a candidates forum. So Brent, you want to just speak to it?
Yeah. Am I on there? Yeah. So that was our conclusion. To be conservative is, rather than any one individual renting city property, is that we would only allow city property to be used in those candidate type where everybody had. Yeah, but again, it's your call.
Well, that's not consistent with what was done 2 years ago. You know, I've got a thing from you here that says that, you know, that you can if it's being leased. So.
Can individually or
You
can
can, it doesn't fall into the same realm as, like, say, the library or the convention center or the city office.
Yeah, can I see that? My wife says I can't remember conversations we've never had.
So I also have the letter that you wrote 2 years ago, Brent, if you want a copy of it, and I'll just read from the conclusion, your conclusion. Based on my research and confirmation, this was about the golf course, is not a public facility as defined in RCW 42.17A.555. The golf course operator did not violate state law by actively campaigning in favor of one or more council candidates and actively campaigning against another candidate by, wasn't decimating, written materials, must have been distributing written materials and having verbal discussions with golf course patrons. And you had asked PDC about this.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
That's the one yes.
You're looking at? Okay.
Yep.
So it seems to me from reading what you said and reading the RCW that the Lions Club, being the only one of the city-owned properties that's leased out, is the only one that would not be a public facility, and therefore, under that conclusion that you drew, however, the other buildings we have would be, so they are subject to the RCW. Is that how you would interpret it now?
Yeah, refreshing that.
Do we lease the CIC, or do they just,
The CIC would fall under that same category as
so
the
they
Lions
actually
Club.
pay us for using that building? They don't pay, does the Lions Club pay us to use the building?
Well,
We have a lease.
yes, we have a lease. We have a lease.
So that means they write us a check.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Okay, does the CIC write us a check?
No.
Does, well, obviously library doesn't count. If they don't write us a check, how do we have a lease? Help me with that. There's gotta be value received.
Sorry.
Yeah,
And North Beach TV as well.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
I'm
another-
just having a discussion.
Yeah, and the building that's adjacent to the Lions Club.
So they write us a check,
No.
even if it's $1.
Yeah, but you do pay the bills.
Yes. I think
Is
they
it a dollar?
do. They have a long-term
It-
lease with
apparently-
the city
Apparently it is a
for a
dollar.
very low amount. I thought it was, when we approved it, it was $10, wasn't it?
I think the
$5.
CIC was $1, I
I
think.
think they just said it all.
Yeah, CIC was $1.
Okay. CIC and Lions
Lions
Club.
must be $1.
And now the golf course is different, in a different legal position than it was
Right.
2 years ago, because
Right.
the golf course now is
City
operated.
owned.
Right,
City owned.
exactly, operated.
So now they're real leases that have some kind of value received. CIC, Lions, TV.
Actually,
So
Richard?
this may be nitpicking, but what's the difference between what we're discussing right now and if I want to have a meeting with people in the public at the Lions Club? Aren't I in fact, when I hold those meetings, aren't I in fact trying to emphasize my position as a council member? Aren't I in fact campaigning? I'd like to know clarification.
Lions Club is separate of that. You could do that.
Yeah, and
You just schedule your time with the Lions Club.
I agree with you, Frank. I mean, it's the, because the Lions Club is the Lions Club, and it's actually, the senior center is overseeing it all, and if they allow it to happen, they're the leasing of the building, so.
So convention center, someone could, as long as they wrote a check and rented
Yeah.
a room or
Correct.
something.
Yeah,
I
they
don't
they
think
want,
so. We own the,
yeah, if it's a third party for a candidate forum where all candidates are able to be there,
Let's just say,
Has no
let's just say
candidates.
I was running for election right now and I wanted to have a meeting in this room. And I wrote a check because I leased the space.
No,
No.
because you would be the sponsor.
That's right, and I'm renting it. I'm-
No, but
no, it doesn't work.
the city is controlled.
there has to be, between you as the candidate and the city, there has to be an intermediary.
So Eric could rent this room for me and I could come have my event.
As long as he invited everybody else.
What's the definition of everybody? Anybody?
All the
who
other
wants to show?
candidates.
Oh, all the other candidates.
Correct.
Okay, got it, all the other candidates.
So then the Lions Club has to do the same thing. It's
No.
leased.
But it's leased by the Lions Club on a long term. It's not a short term room or.
Okay. So short term versus long.
You remember the golf course and the signs that were out and all the advertising and such that was going on. And that was allowed because Sander had the lease. He could do what he wanted.
Sarah had her hand up. I don't know if you can see her.
So I think there's a couple things to consider here. In 2021, the city received several complaints about the Lions Club being utilized for campaigning by individuals. At that time, there is documentation from you, Brent, to Crystal in an email form after talking about it and going with Jeff Moyer and talking to him about it, that you had come to the same conclusion that you could not have individual events that were not for everybody. And that did happen, and that is an email. So I think we're talking about two different things. The golf course is one thing. The Lions Club lease was a totally different thing because it was for campaigning. Kurt was the leasing. He promoted, he endorsed, he decided to put something out. Where the Lions Club was utilizing the city property for campaign purposes.
That's right. Now,
So they're two different things,
So-
and I think that's where there's some confusion.
so the subtlety is, it was Kurt as the tenant that was campaigning. Right? It's not
No.
not the Lions Club that's campaigning. It was Kurt that was campaigning.
The tenant hosted campaign events. He wasn't campaigning, he wasn't running for anything. He was hosting campaign events. People asked, because it was a city-owned property.
But wasn't
And
mine,
you said it's legal because he leases the building. He can do what he wants in that building.
and did I say he could host or did I say he could promote?
You said he did not violate state law by actively campaigning in favor of one or more council candidates.
There you go. He
And
was
actively
campaigning.
campaigning against another
Correct.
candidate.
He campaigning. He individually campaigning.
So Chip Beatty of the PDC said, our conclusion regarding this property is that since it is leased out, it is not considered a public agency or facility. Therefore, any campaign activity is allowable and not a violation of RCW 42.17A.555.
And I think the issue
It's
was.
not a public facility. It wasn't there.
Right. But I think the issue was he individually campaigning for a particular candidate, and whether or not that was appropriate on what was alleged to have been city.
I think we're kind of splitting hairs here. You know, the leasing is the leasing. I think, you know, city property shouldn't be used for campaigning if the city owns the property. If there's a leasing on city property.
And runs it.
And runs it, right. You know, so just so that we are being consistent with, you know, because it can be interpreted, but I don't want to get too confused and too messed up and, you know, things get too complicated that you know, personally, I'm good with where it's at, so, since it's leased, you know, but you all can decide this isn't, yes, you know, but.
So I'm still confused, and I think now, as I listen to all this, that the Lions Club, if I wanted to rent the Lions Club and promote myself as a candidate, I can do that and do it legally. So my second question, related, when this meeting gets over tonight and I walk out of the hallway and somebody asks me a question about my campaign, do I have to go to McDonald's to answer the question?
No.
I'm not campaigning? If somebody asks me a direct question?
You're not fundraising, you're not, you know, stumping.
Okay. I apologize for being nitpicky, but social media is pretty vicious and nitpicky.
Right.
I don't know that I agree with you, Brent, because when we have union elections, you could not talk about the election, you could not talk about candidates, you had to be off the property to talk about that. So, and that's basically run the same way as the city. You know, they really have to watch their campaign procedures and stuff. So you couldn't use their phones, you couldn't use any of their paper, you couldn't talk about it, you had to be off the property to do it. So that's how we had to do it. It's still done that way.
But with that philosophy, that would mean that if you had magnetic signs on your car, you couldn't drive it in the parking lot.
That'd be correct. Not a philosophy, I mean, that's how it was done. That was the rules.
Well, I think the union rules are, because union negotiations, I think, are different than political. I mean, because I've never heard that you can't put a sign on your car in a city parking lot.
Well, I'm not saying that. What I'm telling you is it's not a union contract. It was a policy that you had to follow during election time. You couldn't use any of their equipment, their phones, any of that stuff, which is the same for the city. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't care if you talk about it out here in the hallway, to be honest with you, but I'm just saying.
Lisa?
One last thing, Brent, would this be more of a policy that we would decide versus, like as a city, we would say, okay, yes, you can do this, but as a city, we're just not gonna allow it, or we're gonna allow it?
That's correct. I think that was the point of the discussion was if you all as a body wanted to develop a policy going forward, so there wasn't a gray area, so if there was a complaint, it would be, you could direct them to the policy.
And I actually think that would be a good idea to do in a non-election year. Let's not do that in the middle of an election. But we could do it next year to make a policy for the next election, I think would be a very wise thing to do.
See you the second Monday of November.
Okay, I think we got it. So basically, the conclusion is anyone that's running for office can have time at the Lions Club.
Or CIC.
Or CIC.
Well, I don't know if the CIC is open for.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it is, but it's still.
Well, I mean, they could use it, the Lions Club is the one that has to say whether they can or can't. That's not, you can't just go in and say, hey, you have to let me use it. It's up to the leasee of who can and can't. So, because that's what we did with the golf course, same type of thing.
Permission.
Okay, I'm just curious. So,
Or
say,
permission of,
but say, they say no.
then you don't get to use it.
So they could say no to every candidate, but say yes
Sure.
for one.
Sure.
Sure they could.
Yep.
They lease it. If we've got a real lease, absolutely correct.
Okay.
And I think we'd remember that when it comes time for budget.
Okay. All right, so we're done? Okay. All right. Okay, so our next order of business is going to be executive session. Council, do you have any idea how long you want to be?
5 minutes.
Okay, we'll go 5 minutes. So this executive session will be the portion of the meeting to receive and evaluate complaints or charges brought against public officers or employees. However, upon the request of such an officer or employee, a public hearing or a meeting open to the public shall be conducted upon complaint or charge. RCW 42.30.1101F. And so we're going, I guess, 6:16. Ideally that we will be back. Okay.
Ethics complaint against Councilmember Scott, and Councilmember Scott has chosen to bring it out to the public. So I will read the complaint, and then Councilmember Scott will read her response to it. So this is dated July 17th, 2023, to the clerk of the City of Ocean Shores from Susan Canary. This is a written complaint for violations of the Ocean Shores City Council Ethics Code of Conduct by Councilor Lisa Scott. I have set forth the facts with precision and detail sufficient for determination of sufficiency as stated below. The Ocean Shore City Council has a code of ethics for several reasons, not the least of which is to promote public confidence in the integrity of local government and provide for its fair and effective operation. Councilor Lisa Scott on July 10th, 2023, by her inappropriate behavior, failed to uphold her personal code of conduct and her commitment to abide by the principles of this code. As such, she is clearly in violation of Section 1, Purpose subsection A, Code of Conduct that states, elected council members shall be dedicated to the concepts of effective and democratic governance. They shall honor and respect the principles and spirit of representative democracy and set a positive example of good citizenship. Council members shall be dedicated to the concept of effective and democratic government, local government, and set a positive example of good citizenship. Affirm the dignity and worth of the services rendered by government and maintain a deep sense of social responsibility as a trusted public servant. Recognize that the chief function of local government at all times is to serve the best interests of all the people. Keep the community informed on council affairs. Encourage communication between the citizens and council members. emphasize friendly and courteous service to the public, and seek to improve the quality and image of public service. Further, the council is committed to maintaining a professional and respectful environment for all members. Each member of the council is expected to, 1, conduct themselves with self-awareness, self-respect, and professionalism. 2, treat all others with respect, dignity, and civility. And 3, refrain from engaging in hostile, intimidating, offensive, or unlawful activities or behaviors that may amount to discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment, or bullying. Facts. Did we actually hear Lisa Scott threaten to withhold funding or leasing approval if the leasee did something to offend council? Yes. At the July 10th, 2023 meeting, the Ocean Shore City Council discussed the use of public resources for political events, item number 14. I was listening on the radio that evening and then watched the video when it posted to the City of Ocean Shore's website. I was shocked when I heard Councilor Scott say, and I think we could remember that when it comes time for budget. Let's put this comment in perspective. The conversation on the agenda item was led by Mayor Pro Tem Eric Noble. He began by saying there had been a citizen complaint. He stated that the council should be consistent with the complaint lodged that council was not following their own standards. He thought it best for council to discuss the issue and for the attorney to advise them. The gist of the conversation appeared to be a concern that one candidate should not have the ability to use the Lions Club because it is a city-owned property. Councilor Elduen reminded council and the attorney that the issue had been vetted during council campaign in 2021 when the golf course leasee was promoting and endorsing his candidates and actively campaigning against one he didn't like. The attorney and the PDC agreed that because the golf course was leased, the leasee could do anything he wanted. In the present case, argued Elduen, the Lions Club leased from the city had the same rights as were determined in 2021 for the golf course. Council then engaged in back and forth about what if the leasee denied access to all but one candidate. Several councilors, including Scott, voiced their concern over this prospect, and at approximately 2 hours, Hartman is heard saying, sure, they could say no to everyone but one candidate. Note, no one had any evidence that might be true, and in fact, that statement is not true. The Lions Club does not discriminate and offers their facility to any and all. Further, Noble stated at 2 hours and 1 minute that the Senior Center oversees it all, another false statement. The North Beach Senior Center and the Lions Club are separate entities. Hartman asked if the Lions Club even had a lease and asked if they paid anything. The mayor said no, they do not, another false statement. Sadly, at no time did anyone suggest asking the leasee what his policies are for allowing use of the Lions Club. Scott, Wills, Hartman, Noble, and the mayor conjectured that the Lions Club could say no to every candidate and say yes to one. At approximately 2 hours and 10 minutes, Hartman is heard saying, sure they could. And Scott says, and I think we would remember that when it comes time for budget. Hartman leans back in his chair and laughs. Noble eventually ends the discussion with a suggestion that council work on a policy to address these issues, but to do so after the election. The discussion ended. Scott's comment was clear. It can't be taken out of context even if she tries to manufacture such a defense. She stated clearly that she, and or others as she did not use the word we, will retaliate against the Lions Club if they do something she doesn't like or agree with. It was a threat. Section 3 of the Code of Ethics states that council members refrain from engaging in hostile, intimidating, offensive, or unlawful activities or behaviors that may amount to discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment, or bullying. Scott's verbal comment is irrefutable evidence of the willingness of Scott to use her position to extract her revenge on people, organizations, or groups who may do something that she personally doesn't like. High moral and ethical standards among Ocean Shore city officials are essential, particularly as a means to improve standards of public service and to promote and strengthen the faith and confidence of the people. A council member must maintain decorum, set an example for conduct when they represent the city, and conduct themselves so as not to bring disgrace or embarrassment upon the city. Scott has brought disgrace to this body. She should resign immediately, or the council should remove her from office for misconduct. Given the gravity of the situation, an apology is unsatisfactory and would set a precedent for citizens to question if all city government actions are retaliatory in nature. No government body should have the right to intimidate the people they serve in such a hostile manner. Do as we say, or else you face the consequences. Susan Canari.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? So again, what I'm accused of is inappropriate and threatening behavior, and if I have a defense, I'm going to manufacture evidence and also to extract revenge. So thank you for letting me speak to you regarding this ethics complaint. I am choosing, like Councilmember Noble, to have this done in open session because I believe in open and transparent government. I personally do not think my behavior or comments were inappropriate nor threatening. Could I have been a bit more delicate in my delivery? Probably. For roughly the last 6 months, Mrs. Canary has come before the City Council and has reminded us during her public comments about the importance of being inclusive and transparent. My comments were made in general and not specific to any one organization, though at the time the Lions Club was being discussed. But we had also discussed the radio station, convention center, and golf course previously. Where I was trying to go with my comment, though not quite so eloquently, was that if the city leases city-owned facilities and those entities are deciding who can utilize the property based on politics, religion, race, sex, etc., then yes, we as a council should be looking at how our facilities are being used and possibly funded. Ms. Canary then takes her ethics complaint a step further to imply that I will try to manufacture a defense and that I'm using my position to extract revenge. I ask revenge on what exactly? Not holding people accountable? In order to seek revenge, doesn't someone first have to do something to you? Never did I mention the Lions Club personally, and to imply that I would manufacture a defense is slanderous, libel, and completely absurd, and it is a direct attack on my character. These blanket accusations are an attempt to attack my credibility and slander my name. If we as council members are not allowed to give our opinions, debate topics, respond on social media, etc., without fear of retaliation, i.e. frivolous ethics complaints, then what type of open government do you want? What happened to the days when you could agree to disagree and move on from the subject? Instead, it seems like every time we turn around, another records request or ethics complaint comes forward. To give things a better perspective, Ocean Shores has received approximately 280 public records requests this year. The city of Aberdeen, a city almost 3 times the size of Ocean Shores, has received approximately 75 complaints. I did not include ethics complaints in this because Aberdeen City Council has none this year and they are a council of 12. I would like to further add that during elections, our city council responds to more public records requests than pretty much any other time of year. In fact, there have been roughly 25 public records requests in the last week alone, with Ms. Canary responsible for approximately 7 of them. I'm sorry if some of you thought my comments were not appropriate. That was never my intention, but I am not apologizing for having a conversation or debate in a council meeting open to the public regarding having facilities that are open to all. This type of behavior is more corrosive and divisive and is literally tearing our town apart. I implore you to quit the frivolous complaints so that we can get back to doing what we were elected to do. I look forward to my council peers coming back with the same conclusion and find that my behavior was not inappropriate, threatening, or vengeful.
At the request of the City Council of the City of Ocean Shores, Washington, to approve the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee LTAC recommendation for the use of lodging tax for 2024, presented by Committee Chair Lisa Scott.
Thank you. The committee met on October 3rd, 2023 at the library. And let me tell you, I really just want to give a big shout out to the committee. Committee members, Pat Brunstead, myself, George Lee, Mary LeDuc, and Rod Ash. That was a lot of work this year. We had 20 applications, not including the convention center, and we took almost 2 hours going through those. There were some good conversations and some recommendations. I just wanted to mention that LTAC is not just about heads in beds. If you go back and read the RCW, it is about more than that, though I know heads in beds is the primary source. And reports are submitted. However, we do recognize that there are some changes that we would like to see as a committee and hopefully the city asking for some more accurate accounting when it comes to heads in beds. And I think that moving forward, we can maybe work with the city and get that application a little bit more clarified. And I also want to give an especially big thank you to Sarah Logan because she really kept us all going through this. And that's just a lot of information to be brought forward. So as I mentioned, we had 20 applications. You have a copy of them in your packet. We went through them all and recommended that some come back for the second round of, the second round of funding that we would do in early 2024 in March. And then we also recommended that some might not be a good fit. Again, it was difficult. This isn't easy. And I would like to add, it would, in the future, and this is just, I guess, me saying this personally, it would be nice if the events that we have could work their way toward being self-sustaining, because I think it would be nice if we had additional money to support additional events, especially in the off-season. I know that in infancy and startup events, LTAC is probably it is necessary for a successful event, and we understand that. But just as it'd be nice in the future that we see some of the events wean down on their asking requirements so that we can encourage new events to come forward. And I will, just before I turn this over for public comment, I do want to tell the council one thing, that just remember, if we do not approve the request for tonight, if we have any changes that have to go back to LTAC, that number 12 on the agenda is tied to the LTAC funds. And with that, public comment.
Do we have public comment? I'm not seeing any. Or Joe Kraus, from behind the curtain.
I'm Daryl Prowse. I'm here as a volunteer and as a president of North Beach TV. We submitted a request for some LTAC funds, and I wanted to just talk to the governing body here directly, because we were asked to come back in the second round, but I'd sure like to get it going on the first round. NBC TV, North Beach TV, is an independent 501c3 nonprofit. Our request is to expand our services to a live stream in addition to our current cable TV transports. A live stream would allow distant viewers to get our local programming through things like Roku or Amazon Video. And we're asking for capital equipment hardware and software for about $3,500. So the $3,500 is indeed hardware, software. The Grays Harbor County LTAC group, they prohibit capital equipment for items not directly involved for the project. So it prohibits you from buying something else that's not really going in towards what your goals are. But my request, or our request, is indeed directly related to our request. We cannot do this without the gear. And then they talked about heads and beds, and I can give examples and data. This is a long-term project, so I can't say that there's going to be a lot of people coming in next week, but this is something that could be happening over the course of the next year or two. And I can tell you that right now, the mayoral candidate forum that we broadcast live had 660 views on our Facebook page, and of that, 29% was female, 70% male. Ocean Shores had 564 views, but if you look at the real numbers, and I can provide numbers for the whole thing, so we could be looking at individual commercials, but for the Ocean Shores, for this mayoral forum on YouTube, had 564 viewers from Ocean Shores, but 309 from Seattle. So you're looking at 1/3 more from out of town. So it meets the requirement of going plus 50 miles. And so we've all got others from Linwood, Virginia, United Kingdom, and Brazil, of all places. But anyway, so it's I ask you guys to approve our request for a reasonable $3,500. Thank you.
Do I have any more public comment? Seeing none, right? Okay, council. Catherine.
I listened to all of the meeting. You hung in there, good for you, almost 2 hours, longest I remember viewing. And I did have questions about the applications that were tabled. Some of them made sense, and I understand why Mr. Prowse just got up there, because I think it was Rod was questioning the use of money for capital expenditures. So maybe that explanation goes a ways. But why did you table why did they table the Lions Club request for playground equipment?
If I'm gonna try to remember back to that, but I thought that the committee did not think that that was a good use of the funds. I'm not 100% sure. That was toward the end of the conversation, and I think they just encouraged them to reapply at the next funding stage.
Right, but it seems to me that playground equipment is kind of the same as replacing the skate park.
Well, I
in a
think
lot
that,
of instances.
yeah, and again, please don't shoot me if I'm
No,
wrong,
no.
but I'm trying to remember, but I think part of the deal was in city-owned facilities, the Lions Club actually has a lease of which in their lease it says they're responsible to maintain that equipment. Now, I could be wrong on that, but that's what I was told. And then also, the skate park is owned by the city and run by the city.
Right, so then with that reasoning, the city should have been responsible for replacing it, not the LTAC.
No, city facilities are allowed to be used for LTAC funds. That's
So-
directly written into the RCW.
Okay.
In the instance of the Lions Club, I think the issue was the fact that it's in their lease that they are to maintain the equipment. And I think that was why, but without getting into the weeds, asking them to postpone that until the second reading so that could be looked at in more depth. Hopefully I answered that.
Well, we had the Garden by the Sea there for all last summer, and there's a lot of kids that used that playground equipment.
Yeah, and I think that was acknowledged during the LTAC committee. I think that definitely was an acknowledgement. I think that they were just uncomfortable without having a little bit, I know I talk with my hands, having a little bit more in-depth information. And it was just an encourage to reapply. And again, they felt comfortable bringing that back to the city council and leaving that decision up to the city council if you wanted to kick back to LTAC, if you were comfortable waiting till the next round, which would be in March. So that's where we're at.
Well, I'm seeing Scott over here nodding his head. So I'm wondering if maybe you have some lawyerly comments on this issue, because
I was only nodding, but she is correct. It is written into the lease, but the Lions Club is responsible for maintaining the playground equipment. And that's specifically written in the lease. So that's all I was nodding at, is that she was correct.
But Catherine, if you want to make a motion
Yeah,
and have the council vote on it.
yeah, I'm gonna move to fund the Lions Club request for $33,624 for playground equipment.
Okay. And I think you're going to say what I'm going to say, but go ahead.
What?
We can't do that. So the LTAC committee by RCW makes a recommendation to the city council. You can either choose to not approve anything. You cannot approve more than what their recommendation is. So since they have recommended 0, you cannot recommend to pass anything more than 0. That's the RCW.
So I'll withdraw that motion. Can I make a motion to send it back to the LTAC? I guess that's what they're doing. Never mind.
Right, and that's what you can do. You could make a motion that we do not pass tonight with a recommendation to give money to whatever organization you want to, goes back to LTAC. LTAC would come back with another recommendation, either agree or not agree. Council then can make the decision what they need to do.
Okay.
Can I add one thing?
That would include then the North Beach, Mr. Prouse's request as well.
That is correct. And again, for the Lions Club, we are into the winter months. So maybe waiting till March isn't such a big thing. which is what the committee just encouraged them to do, is come back in March, but that is up to the city council if you want to go with the recommendations or not at all and kick everything back to the lodging tax.
So we kick everything back?
Whole thing was bad, and it's not the case.
I withdrew my motion.
Okay, yes, Eric.
Yeah, so that, since there is the option of coming back in March, and I went through all of these, and I agree with most of them, not all of them, but I think for the most part it was a good deal. So I just will make a motion to approve a request of the City Council of the City of Ocean Shores, Washington, to approve the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendation for the use of lodging taxes for 2024.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so roll call, please.
Eric Noble,
Yes?
Councilmember Noble's a yes. Councilmember Sprague,
Abstain.
Councilmember Sprague is an abstain. Councilmember Elduen,
Yes.
Councilmember Elduen is a yes. Councilmember Klein,
Yes.
Councilmember Klein is a yes. Councilmember Scott,
Yes.
Councilmember Scott is a yes. Councilmember Wills,
Yes.
Councilmember Wills is a yes. Councilmember Hartman,
Yes.
Councilmember Hartman is a yes. That's 6 yeses and 1 abstention.
Okay. Moving on.